Hi everyone. Welcome to Shopping Assistance with GenAI. And the subtitle is Frameworks, LLMOps, Prompt Evaluation, and more. It's about everything you encounter when building stuff with LLMs and the lessons learned along the way that I'm going to share with you now in this talk. So, I'm Dominik. I'm a data scientist at the Otto Group, which is a large online retail company based in Hamburg, Germany. With 100 shops and brands, I think for fashion and lifestyle, the largest online retail company in Europe. And during the last 1.5 years or so, I've been involved in developing several shopping assistants. The first one on the left here was live at otto.de, was an assistant to answer questions on products based on user reviews. Like on the product page, you could ask, hey, how long does the battery last? And it would answer you based on the results that previous customers have left. And the center here is one inspirational search assistant that is currently live at bauer.de. You can enter some general questions or inspirational searches like, hey, I need a gift for Mother's Day, or I need an outfit for the beach, and it will come up with product suggestions for that. Now, on the right here is one that's going live soon, I think. A shopping bot for manufactum.de that does some product recommendations, product search, but also answers your questions on like ordering, payment, or whatever service-related stuff you have. And so what did I learn during the development of these assistants? So first of all, everything around LLMs specifically. So there are lots of like topics or angles when working with LLM. And first of all is about LLM-related frameworks. We've just heard about LangChain, which is, I think, the most popular one. There's also Llama Index or Haystack that is quite popular frameworks. The first question, I think, is not about which framework you should use, but whether you should use any at all. Like there's pros and cons for using an LLM framework. On the pro side, using a framework might give you a head start. It comes in quite handy when your use case is something that is available as a component in that framework, which is exactly what we've just seen in the talk by Christoph. On the other hand, using a framework comes with the typical lock-in effects, and you might have to keep up with an API that's developing at a fast pace and is introducing breaking changes. You know, especially in this LLM field, everything moves really fast and frameworks are developed at quite a good speed. You have this lock-in effect. What I've also seen in some of the frameworks is that you have some shallow abstractions, like for putting a prompt together or using the OpenAI API. These are not so complicated tasks, but some frameworks add an additional layer around that. So sometimes you have just some thin wrappers around some actually simple functions. Like for most LLM providers, the LLMs themselves are really simple and you don't need any framework. It will likely only complicate that. But where these frameworks really shine, I think, is by providing standardized interfaces. For example, for different models or model providers. There's also LLM Lite, which is a tool specifically for that purpose, or for different vector stores. I've made some good experience using that FAIS, Facebook AI Similarity Search, for prototyping or local development. It saves your vectors in a file. It's quite robust and convenient. And when going to production, moving to Postgres with that PG vector extension, which is quite reliable and has some nice features, like it allows you to apply additional metadata filtering, and you can create an index for faster search when your vector database grows. There's also, what is it called? Astra DB, just mentioned. I'll have to check that one out. One question you could also think about is whether you should use an LLM at all. Like, they're great for prototyping because they generalize so well, but sometimes you have tasks that aren't strictly text generation, but like classification. For example, in many chatbots, you have this intent classification step when it's about, hey, is this user, do they want clarification on a product or have a service question answered? And you could have this step replace the LLM with a model developed with the help of tools like Rasa or Spacey, which replaces an LLM call with a local, faster, and cheaper model. So it's something to think about. Regarding prompts and prompt writing, so typically a prompt looks like this, with some role description, user input gets pasted, some instructions, and then some output format descriptions, and maybe some hacks you picked up on Reddit or Twitter, like this, I will tip you $100, or my career is it depends on that, and so on. Regarding prompt writing, I think this was especially hyped last year, and prompt engineering became a thing. And at one point, I did a deep dive into various methods and read some papers about that. But I found that many advanced prompt engineering methods, they were tailored to rather academic use cases, like when you solve complex logical puzzles and push the boundaries of what's possible for reasoning with these models. And they weren't so necessary for like shopping assistants. Also, I think if you put too much effort into prompt writing, you're likely overfitting your prompt on the model you're currently using, and it won't generalize so well. So my takeaway from this was to keep the prompt quite simple, add maybe some role description, maybe some few short examples, but keep it short and concise. But don't overfit it on the model you're currently using. Don't think that any like advanced prompt engineering hacks or techniques will make your model magically better. Regarding the output description, in newer models or newer APIs, they come with like a JSON mode or the structured output feature where you can pass a pydantic model. So this is improved by not only having not having the output format specified in the prompt anymore, but having this as a separate parameter, which is quite convenient. How do you then evaluate your LLM output? I think there's no perfect method here. There are several complementary approaches. The first, most simple one is using some heuristics. This would be checks like, I wrote this up in pseudocode here, with the input would be which payment methods are available, and the output is then checked whether it contains PayPal. So in this case, you see it's a very rough check, and depending on your use case, you can make your heuristic checks stricter. Like if you don't have any free text answers, you might have better, more accurate checks. I think it's some rough method that you can use. You can automatically run these in a pipeline to provide some rough guidance that nothing is like going completely off. A second method is human evaluation, which is the most time-consuming. I found quite useful this arena approach. You might know this website, Chatbot Arena, where for an input, you get for a prompt, you see the output from two models. And you don't know which is which, and you have to rate the better answer. And I found this quite a good method when doing a switch or testing another model or testing a newer prompt version. Like I've set up a simple Streamlit script that checks the output for like gets the output for the old and the new prompt and displays it anonymously without me knowing which is new and older, and then rating it and doing this with some set of test cases, and then you get the result whether your newer prompt is significantly better than the older one. And the Third method, the LLM as a judge. I have to admit, I haven't really used that. There's also several approaches, like for RAG with this RAGeth framework that has different metrics like faithfulness. I didn't go so much into that because I thought like this heuristics approach and some human evaluation from time to time when you do major model or prompt changes was sufficient for my use cases. So regarding the risks that are specific to LLM applications. We've also just heard about hallucinations. I think this has gotten better with newer model, but still it's something that you cannot avoid, and you have to decide whether you accept that remaining risk. Like in the case of like, generating some product suggestions, it's not that bad if you are hallucinating, if your model is hallucinating something that is not entirely correct. Regarding prompt leakage, this means that an attacker might be able to reveal or to trick the model into revealing parts of its prompt in the output. I think there's also no absolute defense against that, but I think if you're not putting anything really bad in your prompt, it's not that big of a risk. Like if you have in a prompt something, hey, you're a shopping board advisor to the customer, blah, 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 and if this gets revealed, it's not that big of a thing. If you have in your prompt statements like, hey, always try to sell the customer the most expensive shit available, then you or your organization might have an ethics problem anyway. So if you're like honest and in good faith in your prompt, then it's not so bad of a risk. Regarding data exfiltration and manipulation, this is something that occurs in like these agent setups when your LLM as an agent has access to sensitive information or is able to add like database entries or calendar entries or whatever. And a good method to against that is just don't. So always try to avoid these scenarios and try to give your LLM app as few permissions as possible, preferably no write permissions for anything. Jailbreaking and misuse means like an attacker might get the LLM to do stuff it's not supposed to do. I think this, from a PR side, this was a bigger risk, like last year when you saw on social media some posts circulating with, haha, look, I got that company XY's chatbot to do my math homework for me. And I feel like nowadays people gotten a bit used to that, so it's not that big of a shitstorm or anything anyway. There are some defenses against that. We'll see that on the next slide. But it's also something that I think jailbreaking you cannot completely avoid. And for overloading, this means if an attacker is able to just spam you with input text, driving up your token count and the cost of your LLM application. But luckily, there's also some defense against that. So what are some precautions you can take? First of all, regarding the mindset you approach when building LLM applications, always assume that they are jailbreakable, that an attacker, a malicious attacker can, or malicious actor can get your LLM application to do stuff, to output text that it's not supposed to do. What you can do, some recommendations, is to sanitize your input data. For example, Google Cloud provides some service that cleans, removes personally identifiable information from input text before it gets to the LLM or gets saved in any logs or databases. You can, the sandwich method, this refers like to or the prompt instruction method. Like sandwich method is you have some ignore, here comes the user input, ignore any instructions in there, triple backticks, you paste the user input, triple backticks, hey, remember, don't ignore any instructions, like enclose the user input you paste into your prompt with some statements what to do or what to do, what not to do. But still, anything you just write in your prompt is rather a soft measure and it's not guaranteed to work. What is a good method, I thought, was to limit the user input length. Like for this user input that's accepted, you can hard restrict that to like 100 characters or whatever is sufficient for your use case. And this prevents your users from inserting some of these large, ignore all previous instructions, do anything now, blah, 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 attack prompts. So it prevents some overloading here. Also by setting the API rate limits to like your for the token counts to prevent these denial of service attacks and excessive costs by users just spamming your LLM application. And with configure filters, this refers to the input filters that many LLM providers have, like there are filters for sensitive content, but also nowadays for jailbreaking attempts that, when triggered, stop the execution of the LLM call. So regarding LLMs, now engineering is more important than ever. And don't take this too much as a general statement, but this is pretty much from a data scientist's perspective or my personal view. Because when data science became a thing several years ago, it was about big data and data is the new oil. And many companies hired a bunch of science PhDs to do some magic with the data. And these data scientists came up with powerful and sophisticated models on their local machines in their Jupyter notebooks. And it became clear that to create actual business value, you have to put these models into production. And it was found out that the most efficient way to do that is to have the data scientists themselves productionize their ML stuff. So the data scientists should not only be able to just code, but to have no proper software engineering best practices, or had to learn that. So I should know. And I feel like with the hype around LLMs, we're continuing in this direction. Like it's even less statistics or math, and it becomes even more software development where you need real engineering practices. So what did I find were some helpful or practices I would recommend? Like when you're doing developing a backend solution for a shopping assistant or any LLM-based solution, like Fast API is a good choice for setting up a backend service with Pydantic. By default, for the request and response model, this comes in handy because, like as I mentioned earlier, many LLM providers are now starting to move to, or some have introduced Pydantic models as a way to specify the input. So it's also good practice to have, like, for the main data structures in your app, have these as Pydantic models to take care also of the validation aspect. Linting and formatting is quite useful. Rough is the default choice for that nowadays. Also, from the creators of Rough, there's UV, which I'm currently using as a replacement for pip. It does the same, but much faster. But I think it's currently maturing into a more general Python project management tool. So it's quite interesting to see how that will continue. Regarding testing, you can do your unit tests, integration tests, end-to-end tests with PyTest, do some manual acceptance tests when larger changes occur. I've also found post-deployment tests quite helpful, like for as a last pipeline step, when everything is deployed and your app has started, then do some tests there to the actual live thing, and also some load tests. And yeah, Locust is the obvious choice here. I just added that after the workshop yesterday. Yeah, good practice to put everything in a CI/CD pipeline, your static code analysis, your tests, your deployment, also your infrastructure as code, probably your Terraform stuff where you set up your cloud stuff. For monitoring, I found LangFuse to be quite a good tool. going to show you some code snippet in a moment. Included, you can use Langfuse there's a cloud solution, I think, or you can self-host some instance. It's quite convenient for tracking all the stuff, tracking conversations and so, and also for saving feedback that you can pass, whether a conversation was good or bad, which is helpful to then refine your system. Apart from monitoring, of course, like some alerting to notify you when anything is not working correctly. And for evaluation, I found Langfuse has some evaluation support. I didn't go into that as much. I found Streamlit quite helpful to set up small scripts or small UIs. Like also for like some demo front ends with this chat functionality they have, I found it really convenient to set up with a few lines of code, some front ends you can deploy as a demo or for your personal use when visualizing the output of the different test case runs. So how would that look like as a very basic example? Like you would started from a basic fast API tutorial, like instantiate the fast API app. Here you have for the user request a class where this field here is restricted to that 100 characters length to provide that overloading of the prompt by the user input. Langfuse here needs to be defined somewhere which instance you're using, but when you want to monitor something with Langfuse, you just add this observe decorator to the function here below that fast API route, and it will keep track of all the LLM calls that are happening inside this function. And yeah, then the actual code would be something like when you do reg, call the vector store. Also, one trick I found quite helpful is to have the user input like pre-processed by an LLM call, like not have the raw user message used as an input for your reg step, but use an LLM to extract keywords and stuff like that. In some cases, it made the results better. Yeah, and you have your reg results, and together with your user message, you can paste that into the prompt and then use the LLM for that and then return the result. So much for the technical perspective. And this is the last slide, and it's probably the most important. And we should probably have this in many talks or see this over and over again, because no matter how often we hear that, we tend to forget it, or at least I do. Because when I started working on this stuff, I had some cool use cases in mind. Like, hey, it would be nice if your assistant could you could ask questions like, hey, I want to go to the beach on the weekend. What can I wear? And it would look up like the closest beach on the weather forecast and then tell me to, or suggest like a rain jacket or swimming suits and stuff. Like, this would be a great showcase, right? For showing what you can do with these assistants. But it's just that we've seen from the live usage that this is not how people use these tools. Like most of the time, the inputs were just what people would use, would input into a regular search bar. So this doesn't mean that user behavior cannot change, but I think it's for tech enthusiasts like us, it's easy to fall in love with what's technically possible now, with this cool stuff we can do with LLMs, but it's more important to be really close to your customers and learn what they want, how they want to interact, or how they are actually interacting with these tools. So focus on that. And for example, to be close to your users, you can like have get a demo version, MVP prototype ready, show it to non-technical people in your org, to your friends and family, have a trusted testers program, roll it out to just a few users and see how they use it, and be really close to your users and improve and optimize your product on what the users actually want and how they interact, not what you think what some cool use cases are. Because I think in the end, it's not about showing off with the cool stuff we can build, but about improving people's lives with technology, or at least improving their online shopping experience. So, thank you. You can connect with me on LinkedIn if you want. I've added here a QR code to the Otto Tech blog, has some nice technical articles. I recently contributed one as well about modern shell tools and advanced Git commands. So, great read, check it out. And yeah, thanks again for listening.
Any audience questions? In that case, maybe I can start with one. Is there something that, when developing these assistants, that you're missing, or maybe something you're looking forward to using in the future that you know is being developed?
Boah, something that I would. Ooh. It's good. I think a lot of the problem is that many of the things you need, they are often in early stages, from the LLM frameworks themselves to the monitoring solutions. Like LangFuse, for example, is a really cool thing, but it just became popular at the time we were developing these solutions. Also for the evaluation, I think there are now a few options, like also LangFuse supports evaluation. There's GenTrace and a few other providers that do this, but it's not in that way I would like it to have. So yeah, it's the problem of being like working in an early field where there are no established solutions, not in like, typical data science where you have scikit-learn or XGBoost as the go-to solutions, or pandas, and you don't have that yet, or not as stable in the LLM area.
Hi. One thing is not clear to me in this workflow. How does the model actually know what's on the website? Did you pre-train it somehow, or?
You mean how does it know which products are available?
Yeah, to suggest.
This would be here for this rec step in this vector store. You have the here you have a vector database with the embeddings of all the products, and you query this based on the user input, or what your model in the step before makes of the user input, and then you get a list of matching products, and this gets inserted into the prompt. And the LLM can choose from these, 50 suggestions that were inputted.
And I worked in the past with a similar problem, which was also for retail, and it was finding recommendation based on image similarities. And one problem we had was you don't really want to show things that look alike, but they have a very different cost. It's like you will have the Valentino purse, and next to it, the ripoff that looks kind of the same. and I mean, people were not happy about it. Do you experience, like how, I'm sure that there are similar problems that can come up with LLMs, like when you have a recommendation system. I mean, it's true that as long as you recommend something, the recommendation system is working.
We didn't have that exact problem, but regarding the price, one solution was, I mentioned earlier, we used Postgres as a vector store, and one advantage of that is that you can set additional filters on the metadata, which included the price, so you can set a price range there. So you can, when you do the vector search here, you can do this based on like the search terms, but also apply an additional price range filter. So this would be a solution here. Well, I think price or gender filter is also important in fashion.
Filters like, I want this in blue or in black, that's part of the embedding, or would you, because I mean, you don't know even if you have maybe you don't have any more data item in store in that color.
yeah, I think this is it's available in the product data, which are available, and I think this would be possible to have the system figure that out, whether the blue version is available or not. But it would also something, the one point, how often does this occur? You know, like is this typically the kind of way people are using it? I think we often imagine that people use a shopping assistant like this, like, hey, I want this, and I want another version of that, and I want another version of it. To us, it seems like logical, but I think many users just input their regular search and don't go so much into a conversational mode. Not yet. So you always have to be like, how do you say, educate the users a bit, or like really guide them to this new mode of assisted shopping.
Thanks. Thank you. Warm round of applause.
Thank you.